Welcome to HFY Fiction Journey. An alien's curiosity about how humans multiply takes a hilarious turn when it asks, "Can I try?" Get ready for laughs, awkward moments, and some sci-fi fun. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more out-of-this-world stories. Life aboard the Mississippi 20088, the largest space station in the galaxy, was a constant dance of cultures. Aliens from dozens of species mingled here, making the station a massive experiment in diplomacy, or at worst, a ticking time bomb of misunderstandings. As a human liaison, my job was to ensure we avoided the latter. With so many species and their unique customs, I often found myself explaining human behaviors that seemed obvious to us but baffled everyone else. And then there were the Cavans. Cavans were almost human. Almost. They had the same basic body structure, but with striking differences. Blue skin, golden eyes, and a natural grace humans could never quite match. Their culture didn't care much for modesty or privacy. They embraced physical closeness, though not in the intimate way humans understood it. To them, everything was practical. That's why, when Nato, a Cavan woman I'd gotten to know well over the past few months, approached me in the station's lounge, I should have seen the warning signs. She was hard to miss. Standing at the bar in her usual barely there orange outfit, her blue skin gleaming under the station's lights. The golden knots in her hair made her stand out even more. "Lee!" Her bright, musical voice interrupted my thoughts. Before I could finish my drink, she was already sliding into the seat next to me with a playful smile that made me suddenly aware of my surroundings. "Nato," I greeted her with a nod, trying to keep my tone light. "What brings you here tonight?" Her golden eyes narrowed mischievously. "I was hoping to run into you. There's something I've been meaning to ask." I raised an eyebrow, cautiously sipping my drink. "Oh, what's on your mind?" Her eyes gleamed with curiosity. "You humans are so connected to each other." I chuckled, relaxing a bit. "Yeah, I guess we are. We like to stick together." "No," she said, leaning in closer, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "I mean really connected. I've seen the way humans bond, physically, emotionally. You're so intimate." Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water. I sat up straighter, fully aware of the direction this conversation was heading. "Well, we do tend to form emotional bonds," I said, hoping to steer the conversation back. Nato's hand slid a little further up my arm, her touch warm against my skin. "Keens don't do that. Reproduction for us is done in labs, efficient but sterile." She paused, studying me closely. "I want to understand how humans multiply." I nearly choked on my drink, coughing as I tried to regain my composure. "You want to understand how humans reproduce?" "Yes," she said, her voice full of innocent curiosity, though her eyes sparkled with something far less innocent. "You humans make it so personal. It fascinates me." Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and kissed her. The moment our lips met, there was no hesitation, no awkward fumbling. Her lips were soft and warm, and she responded eagerly, her hand sliding up to my neck, pulling me closer. Whatever curiosity she had about human connection was quickly turning into something much more intense. We stumbled toward the bed, our hands exploring each other with a mix of urgency and fascination. Nato's orange outfit slipped off easily, and soon nothing was left between us but skin and heat. I could feel her heartbeat quicken against my chest, her breath hot against my neck. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was primal, a shared desire neither of us could deny. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the station and our steady breathing. Nato lay beside me, her head resting on my chest, her golden hair spread across the pillow. She was silent for a while, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my skin. "So that's what it feels like," she said softly, almost to herself. "To really connect." I chuckled, running a hand through her hair. "Not what you expected." "No," she admitted, lifting her head to meet my eyes. "It was more. I thought it would be just a physical sensation, but there's something else, something deeper That's the emotional part, I said, smiling. It's not just about the act. It's about feeling close to someone, sharing something intimate. Nato looked thoughtful, her eyes narrowing slightly. Keens don't have that. Our reproduction is so clinical, so detached. I never understood why humans found this so important. Well, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Now you know. She smiled, a mischievous glint returning to her eyes. I do, and I think I like it a lot. We lay there in comfortable silence, the weight of our connection still lingering in the air. I closed my eyes, feeling more relaxed than I had in weeks. But then Nato shifted beside me, her hand trailing down my chest in a way that sent a familiar shiver through me. So, she began, her voice teasing. How many times do humans usually multiply in one night? I opened one eye, grinning at her. Depends on the alien's curiosity. Her laughter filled the room, warm and playful, and she leaned in to kiss me again. Well, she whispered, I'm still curious. The next morning, I woke up with Nato still curled against me. The station's artificial daylight filtered in through the small window, casting a soft glow over her blue skin. I couldn't help but admire how peaceful she looked, so different from the mischievous alien who had dragged me into the situation last night. But something stirred inside me, a feeling of uncertainty. What now? I carefully untangled myself from her, trying not to wake her as I slid out of bed. My mind raced as I pulled on my clothes, already thinking about the diplomatic ramifications. Humans weren't exactly known for casual relationships with other species, and while cultural exchange was encouraged, this felt like uncharted territory. Sure, it had been consensual, mutual, even, but still, how would this change things? I ran a hand through my hair, staring at the floor, and then, as if on cue, I heard her stir behind me. You're thinking too much again. Nato's voice was soft but amused. I turned to see her watching me, propped up on her elbow, her golden eyes sparkling with that familiar mix of curiosity and playfulness. I just didn't expect this, I admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. You know, everything between us to happen so fast. Nato slid closer, still languid from sleep, and rested her chin on my shoulder. Humans overthink everything. You act like you've done something wrong. I sighed, trying to gather my thoughts. It's not that, it's just that you and I come from two very different worlds. For humans, what we did isn't just physical, it's emotional. She hummed softly, tracing a finger down my spine. And what we did last night, was that not emotional for you? I glanced at her, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. It was, but I'm wondering what it meant to you. Nato shifted to look into my eyes, her expression unusually contemplative. I think I underestimated how much emotion is involved. You told me it was about connection, but I didn't realize how intense that could feel. You're right. Keens don't bond like this. I nodded, feeling a bit of relief. Exactly. For humans, it's more than just biology. Nato's fingers brushed my cheek, her golden eyes softening. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. It was different, intimate in a way I've never experienced before. Her words made my chest tighten, and I realized how much last night had affected me too. It wasn't just a physical encounter. Something deeper was brewing between us. The lines between our species were blurring, and I wasn't sure where that would lead. But then Nato smiled, her mischievous nature returning. So, how does this work for humans? Do we just multiply again? I laughed, feeling the tension dissolve. It's not always about multiplying, you know. Sometimes it's just about being close. Being close, she repeated, testing the phrase. Then, with a sly grin, she added, but multiplying seems pretty fun, too. Her playful nature made it impossible to stay serious for long, and I found myself leaning in, kissing her softly. This time, it was slower, more tender. When we pulled apart, she looked at me with something that almost resembled understanding. What happens next? She asked quietly, her voice more serious now. I don't know. I admitted, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. This is new for me too, but I think we'll have to figure it out together. She smiled, pressing her forehead against mine. I think I like that. The day after our encounter, things felt strangely normal, at first. We went back to our usual routines, trying to maintain the professional distance we'd always had. But there was an undeniable shift between us. Every time our eyes met across the station's halls, there was a spark, a shared secret that hadn't been there before. But soon, the questions started. Keens, for all their detachment, were observant and they gossiped. It wasn't long before one of Nato's colleagues, a fellow Keen named Doran, approached me in the station's mess hall. Lee, he greeted casually, though his gaze was sharp. I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Nato lately. I try to keep my expression neutral, though my pulse quickened. Yeah, we've been working on some cultural exchange projects. You know, diplomacy. Doran's blue lip quirked into a knowing smile. Cultural exchange, HM? Is that what humans call it? My stomach twisted. Had Nato said something? Was our night together common knowledge? I kept my tone even. We're just friends. His golden eyes gleamed with amusement. Sure, friends. There was a pause, and I felt the weight of his scrutiny. Keens might not have the same concept of relationships, but they weren't oblivious to human customs. If word of our connection had spread, it could complicate things, personally and professionally. Doran leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You know, Lee, Keens aren't known for forming attachments. What you did with Nato, it's not something we usually do, but she's different. She's curious. I tensed, unsure where this is going. What are you trying to say? I'm saying that if you're not careful, this little experiment of hers could get complicated. Humans get attached, but for Keens, it's just biology. His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Was that all this was to her? Just an experiment in human connection? Before I could respond, Doran stood, giving me a pat on the shoulder. Just something to think about. I'd hate to see a human get hurt because they misunderstood what this was. As he walked away, a knot formed in my stomach. Was he right? Was I reading too much into what had happened between Nato and me? Humans were emotional creatures, prone to attachment, while Keens approached everything with cool detachment. Even relationships. That evening, when I met Nato for our usual diplomatic briefing, the air between us felt different. We were still laughing, joking, and exchanging ideas, but there was something unsaid. I could see it in her eyes, feel it in the way she hesitated when she touched my arm. Doran's words echoed in my mind. Eventually, as we wrapped up the briefing, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Nato, I began carefully. Can we talk about what happened between us? Her golden eyes met mine, and for the first time since that night, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. She nodded, her playful smile fading slightly. Of course, she said softly. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I know Keens don't form the same kind of emotional attachments that humans do. But for me, what happened, it wasn't just an experiment. Nato's expression softened, and she reached out to touch my hand. Lee, I know. It wasn't just biology for me either. Her words took me by surprise, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. So, what does this mean for us? She smiled, her fingers lacing through mine. It means that maybe I'm not like other Keens. Maybe I want to explore this connection. Just like you, I exhaled, a smile tugging at my lips. So, we figured out together? Nato nodded, her golden eyes twinkling with warmth. Together,